The sun blazed mercilessly over the crowded city streets, the heat bouncing off the pavement in shimmering waves. People moved briskly, focused only on their own business, barely noticing the boy weaving through the crowd, his bare feet skimming the hot concrete. Liam, no older than 12, clutched a stack of newspapers tightly in his small hands, his worn-out clothes clinging to his thin frame. Every paper he sold meant a few more coins, just enough to buy food for the night. He had no time for distractions. But then he saw him. An elderly man stood at the edge of the sidewalk, shifting uneasily as he squinted at a small piece of paper. The city roared around him, yet he seemed completely lost, his suitcase resting beside him like an anchor holding him in place. Liam watched as people brushed past the old man, some barely sparing him a glance, others muttering in frustration when he unknowingly blocked their path. No one stopped. "Where is that hotel?" "I must have taken the wrong turn," the man mumbled, his face creased with worry. Liam hesitated. He had papers to sell, money to earn, but something inside him whispered, "Help him." Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward. "Sir," Liam said softly, looking up at the man, "do you need help?" The old man's face lit up with relief. "Oh, bless you, son. I think I'm lost." Without another word, Liam reached for the man's heavy suitcase, his small hands gripping the handle firmly. "I know the way," he said, leading Mr. Harrison through the busy streets. As Liam led Mr. Harrison through the crowded streets, the city pulsed with life around them, street vendors shouting out prices, the hum of traffic filling the air, the occasional honk of an impatient driver. But Liam barely noticed any of it. His focus was on the old man beside him, whose weary steps dragged slightly as he struggled to keep up. The suitcase was heavy, its weight digging into Liam's small fingers, but he didn't complain. He had carried heavier things before. The real challenge was the scorching pavement beneath his bare feet. Every step sent a sharp sting through his soles, the heat biting at his skin. He winced slightly, but kept walking, determined not to show his discomfort. Mr. Harrison, though preoccupied with his surroundings, eventually took notice. He slowed his pace, glancing down at the boy beside him. His sharp eyes caught the way Liam flinched with each step, the way he subtly shifted his feet to avoid the hottest patches of concrete. The old man frowned. "Where are your shoes, son?" Liam shrugged, his grip tightening on the suitcase. "Shoes cost money," he said simply. "I'd rather help my mom buy food." For a moment, Mr. Harrison said nothing. He just stared at Liam, his expression unreadable. Then he sighed deeply, shaking his head. "You're a good kid, Liam," he murmured. Liam didn't respond. He wasn't used to praise, especially not from strangers. After what felt like an eternity, they finally reached the hotel. The grand building towered over them, its polished glass doors reflecting the sunlight. A doorman stood by, offering Mr. Harrison a polite nod as he approached. Liam set the suitcase down carefully, stepping back and dusting his hands off on his worn-out shorts. "Here you go, sir," he said, offering Mr. Harrison a small smile. The old man looked at him with a mix of gratitude and something else, something deeper. "I don't have any cash on me," Mr. Harrison admitted, patting his pockets regretfully. "But, what's your name, boy?" "Liam, sir," he replied, shifting awkwardly under the man's gaze. Mr. Harrison nodded slowly, as if committing it to memory. "Liam, I won't forget you." Liam just nodded, offering one last wave before disappearing back into the city, blending into the crowd like he had never been there. But what he didn't know was that this moment, this small act of kindness, was about to change his life forever. Liam woke up to the dim morning light filtering through the cracks in their tiny, run-down apartment. The walls were thin, the air stale, and the blanket draped over him barely kept out the morning chill. He could hear the distant sound of the city waking up, Cars honking, people shouting, the world moving on as if nothing had changed. But for Liam, today felt different. He sat up slowly, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, and saw his mother sitting at the small wooden table near the kitchen. She was staring at an empty plate, her fingers nervously tapping against the surface. Her face was drawn, worry etched into every line. "There's no food left," she murmured, without looking up. Liam's heart clenched. He already knew. He had known last night when she gave him the last of their bread and went to bed hungry herself. He had hoped today would be better, but hope didn't fill empty stomachs. Before he could say anything, a sharp knock at the door startled them both. Liam's mother frowned. "Who could that be?" Liam scrambled to his feet and hurried to the door, his curiosity outweighing his hesitation. They rarely had visitors. Most days, they were forgotten by the world. He pulled open the door, and his jaw dropped. Standing there, in a perfectly pressed uniform, was a hotel chauffeur. A polished black car was parked just beyond him, its glossy surface reflecting the early morning sun. But Liam's eyes weren't on the car. They were on the chauffeur's hands. One hand held a small envelope. The other, a brand new pair of sneakers. The man smiled warmly. "Liam, Mr. Harrison sent this for you." Liam's breath caught in his throat. He hesitated before taking the envelope, his fingers trembling slightly. The paper felt heavy, too heavy for just a letter. His heart pounded as he ripped it open. Inside, his eyes widened in pure shock. A stack of crisp cash was neatly folded inside, more money than Liam had ever seen in his life. But before he could react, his mother let out a sharp gasp. Who sent this?" she whispered, stepping closer, her hands shaking. Liam barely heard her. His focus was on the letter. His fingers shook as he unfolded it, his eyes scanning the words written in elegant, careful handwriting. And with every sentence, his world changed. Liam's hands trembled as he held the letter, his breath coming in short, uneven gasps. His eyes scanned the words over and over, trying to make sense of what he was reading. "Liam, you didn't just help a lost tourist. You helped the owner of the largest hotel chain in the city." His heart pounded. Mr. Harrison wasn't just some elderly man visiting town. He was a billionaire. Liam swallowed hard and kept reading. "Your kindness reminded me of the goodness in people. You could have ignored me, like so many others did. But instead, you stopped. You helped. And for that, I am forever grateful." He glanced at his mother, whose hands were clasped over her mouth, tears already welling in her eyes. Then he read the final lines, words that would change everything. "Please accept this gift as a token of my gratitude. The money inside is for you and your mother, not just for food, but to help you build a better future." Liam's fingers tightened around the stack of crisp bills inside the envelope. It wasn't just a few dollars. It was enough to pull them out of poverty, enough to give them a fresh start. But before he could process the weight of it all, the chauffeur cleared his throat, smiling kindly. "Mr. Harrison has one more gift for you," he said. Liam blinked, still overwhelmed. "More?" The man nodded. "He wants you to have a full scholarship, at the best school in town." Liam's breath hitched. His mother let out a choked sob, covering her face as tears spilled down her cheeks. Liam could hardly breathe. A real school? A future? He had never imagined something like this. Tears burned at the back of his eyes, but this time, they weren't from struggle. They were from hope. Weeks later, Liam stepped through the towering gates of his new school, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. He wore a crisp uniform, one that actually fit him, and on his feet were the brand new sneakers Mr. Harrison had sent. Everything felt surreal. The school was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Massive hallways, polished floors, students with books in their hands, instead of worries about their next meal. He had spent so many years believing that places like this were for other kids. Kids who had homes, families, and futures mapped out for them. But now, for the first time, he was one of them. As he took his seat in the classroom, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a neatly folded piece of paper. The letter. The same letter that had changed his life. He ran his fingers over the words, letting their meaning settle deep into his heart. Mr. Harrison's belief in him wasn't just a gift, it was a second chance. Liam smiled softly, tucking the letter away. One small act of kindness had set everything in motion. As the screen faded to black, the words appeared. Kindness is never wasted.